Hey man, what's going on, everybody? Man, it's Coach Pugh back. We know we're on another episode of the Coach's Corner here, man. I know usually we have, college coaches, NFL coaches on, but man, I thought we'd have a special one here because you guys know that we're expanding our national team, man, our national team program product, man, to really give as much exposure as possible. And as you guys know, we always like to bridge the gap between exposure and scholarships. But today, man, I wanted to bring on a special guest, man, a guy who helped start and coach the Nordic Lions, man. We got my guy Pervis on, coming from Finland, correct?
Yes, I
Finland.
live
I gotta
in.
make sure. I gotta make sure I get that right, man. Because
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
European countries, man, we're all over the place. I'm not as familiar. So, man, I'm glad that you're on, man. Tell us about yourself, man. Tell us, how you ended up over there in Europe, the football scene, all of that, man. Give us a quick breakdown on you.
I'll try to make it brief, but
Hey, man,
I'm originally
do your thing, man.
I'm originally from Texas, so excuse my long-windedness because that's just how we do.
Hey, man, it's all good.
From
Yep.
Houston area, so know a little bit about Dallas. Don't too much care for it compared, but I grew up playing football like most Texas kids. Played in college, played a small D1 AA Stephen F. Austin. Shout out to the Lumberjacks, Action Jacks. They're becoming a FBS program now.
Yep.
But after football was done for me, I took my talents overseas, played in a couple of countries in Europe, played in Italy, Switzerland, and Finland, of course. Met my future wife in Finland.
Okay.
Got
Yeah.
I moved back to Texas. Well, we got
Okay.
married in Texas, lived in Houston for about a year and a half before we decided to move back to Finland to be closer to our family and to, set roots.
Right.
We
Right.
moved to Finland, and immediately, first thing I wanted to do, being the man I am, was how can how can I get employed? And
Right.
because I don't know
Yeah.
the culture, I don't know what is, what it makes you employable out here, but I do know that I have a skill set in American football.
Yep.
So I got into coaching right away. Um, Linked up with a local team as the head coach, took them to a championship in one of the lower divisions.
Okay.
And in that process, I felt out what was going on in Finland in the football scene, tried to find my place in the scene, and eventually started doing more international things. And from there, I've always been located in Finland. This is my home. This is where my heart is. This is where I'm
Yeah.
from. Uh, Huva Suomi. But that's a little bit of Finnish. I only speak a little bit, not a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to be like, man, I don't know what you said, man, but hey, I'm
Yeah,
rocking with it. Yeah.
Huva Suomi.
Okay.
Just good Finland. But basically, moved out here, started coaching some local teams out here. Found a little bit of a little bit of gap in what players knew from both the youth level and the men's level in Europe, especially
Hmm.
here in Finland, where there's a lot of experience, a lot of mental know-how, but culturally the football is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then I was able to see football in Sweden, which is our neighbors to the left in Finland.
Okay.
And so I go over there 3 or 4 times a year, follow their football, do a couple of coaching camps there. And then I've done a few things in Denmark, and I haven't got to Norway yet. But I've kept my eye on the Nordic countries and been a part of a lot of different things at the men's level as well as the youth level. And
Right.
yeah, so that catches you up to me. Just so I try to make that as possible is I got moved out here, set my roots, started figuring out where I could be in Finland. Started a podcast in Finland, American
Okay.
football in Finland.
Okay. Love
Yeah,
it.
the most popular podcast in the country.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, Run a youth camp every summer in Finland called the Nordic Challenge, where we
Yep.
bring kids from all over the Nordic countries to do developmental skills workshop with local coaches and a couple coaches from abroad. And I've also held a flag football tournament here in Finland for the last 5 years, the largest tournament in the country. Where this year we're going to have 25 teams from all over the country play flag football, which is
Love
not
it.
it's not a huge sport here. Most tournaments in this country have 3 or 4 teams, and we are able to get 24 teams this year. So
Okay.
I'm excited about that.
That's big, man.
And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's just a little bit of where I'm connected. You'll see I'm wearing a shirt that says Gridiron Imports.
Yeah.
It's another recruitment company uh, based in with the owner is based in Oklahoma, but he
Okay.
does a lot of camps in Europe, and I've helped him do a couple of things before. A shout out to Chris Adamson. He's helped a lot of international kids go abroad and receive scholarships and play in the United States. And that's just how I actually got into the youth area, was doing a couple of projects with him and another company that I worked for called Podium Preps. We really stepped into Europe, started traveling all over Europe. We had an
Yeah.
8 country tour 2 years ago, 8 countries in 2 weeks.
Well, y'all killing it
It
over
was,
there, man.
hey,
Okay,
it
then,
was
yeah.
tough. It was tough. We saw over 600 or 700 European kids.
Yeah.
Helped as kids we could get scholarships. Um, in the last 3 years, no, 4 years that I've been involved on the youth level, I can say I've been a part of at least 150 kids getting some type of athletic scholarship or some way to play football in the United States from Europe, and it's been a
Love it.
blessing because
Love it,
I've
man.
got to learn like what the European culture is like when it comes to American football.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the Nordic Lions. I'm making my way here. I knew I would get here eventually. I
Right.
knew I would. So that leads me to the Nordic Lions about a year and a half ago. Uh, Coach Christian Glasnovich, we call him Glasso, which is much easier to
Yeah,
pronounce.
a whole lot easier. Yep. Yep. Especially for us Texans, man.
Glasso,
Us Texans.
yeah,
Yep. Hmm.
Glasso's a Croatian guy originally, but immigrated to Sweden, lives there with his family and his wife, has a couple of kids, and he has been helping the youth in Sweden
Love it.
for a while. I'm not sure about the numbers, so I'm not going to throw out his resume because I don't know it nearly as well. But he reached out to me as he was putting together this project for the Nordic Lions. And basically, I don't want to get too much into giving too many people shout outs
Yeah.
on here.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah. I
but
understand.
basically, from a guy to knew a guy to knew a guy, he was asked to put together a team,
Yep.
and he was looking for someone in pretty much every country in the Nordics. In Finland, I was the guy that he was told to go to. He came to me. I was able to help him as much as I could. We recruited players from Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland, and took a team to play against the United States team last year in Seattle.
Yep.
Uh, didn't get the result we wanted, obviously,
Yep. 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 I've been
but
there. I've been there before, brother. Yep.
but it was a great experience. And just to tell you a little bit more about what the Nordic Lions are about is giving kids an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get.
Yep.
Our team, we're not a team full of 4 and 5 star recruits with D1 scholarships and things like that. That's just not our bag. It is what it is. But what we do have is we have a roster and we actually recruit our roster every year. So it's not like you're on the team and you're always on it. We even
Right.
tell the kids from last year, when you come back next year, it's another tryout
Another
process.
tryout. Yep.
Because we're looking for a certain type of players. We're looking for players who are coachable, who want to be better, and are willing to go the extra mile to play in the United States. And
You're
for
right.
us, we're a little bit more all-encompassing than most youth programs that have their own agendas. In Europe, it's club ball out here,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you guys did in the States. You probably don't know anything about club ball, but think about AAU
Yep.
for basketball. But that's all we have.
Right.
There
Right.
there is no like little league or a high school team. Like once a kid is 15, 16, which is late, but that's how it is in Europe. Once they're 15,
Right.
16,
Yeah.
they join a team, and that team wants to have them until they're 35. Like
Wow.
they don't want to
Okay.
let them
Yeah.
go. So if
Yeah.
you know anything, yeah, if you know anything about like soccer,
Yeah.
think about somebody
The
like
European League of Soccer. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, think about somebody like Messi or Ronaldo or Cristiano Ronaldo. When they're like 15, 16, they get on this club and they can't leave that club. Like they
Right.
have to stay on that club. That's how American
Okay.
football is here in Europe. And it's tough because it's really
It's tough to
counterintuitive
build
to the
that
point.
program. You're trying to build
Yeah,
that program culture, for lack of a better
yeah,
word, whatever, right?
it's hard
Yeah.
to do. It's hard to keep. One is hard to keep players because
Yep.
you have kids who start when they're young and then they go off to school. They have to
Yep.
leave. They
Yep.
might come back, they might not. So you're missing an age group, and then you have some teams who aren't willing to let their kids go. And that's what Nordic Lions. That's one of our biggest obstacles. Actually, is local teams because
Yep.
when we tell them, "Hey, we're gonna take your kids to the United States," and they might end up liking it that all the club teams think is, so you're going to take our players.
You're gonna take our
So you
players,
take
yep.
our players.
So that's
But
like the same thing with me in the high schools. Or you from Texas, so
yeah,
the high
yeah.
school, same kind of process. Yep, understand that, man.
Well,
I love it. I
at
love it,
least,
man. I love the purpose
at
behind what
least
y'all
in, yeah, at least in the States, at least, a kid you can play on a high school team and you can play on a select team. And you
do.
can
Yeah,
play both of them and that can boost your exposure. In
right.
Europe, really just don't have that opportunity. So the best way for a European player to get exposure in the States is to go to the States.
Go to the
And
states.
once you
Yep.
do that, I mean, in theory, if a team or organization is good enough, players come back and they come
Right.
back and they help out the organization.
Right.
But
Right.
most of the teams that are like, don't take our players, those are the ones that won't come back. And we know why.
Love it. Love it. So look, let me ask you a question, man. For the people that don't know, like me, right? For example, when you say Nordic, what are we talking about with Nordic? Is that like a group of countries? Is that a group of cities? Like, well, what are we
It's
referring to when we say Nordic?
sim- similar to how in the States when I say the South, or I say Midwest.
Okay. Okay. Got you. Got you.
And you have a select amount of states that fit that. In the Nordics, you're talking about specifically Scandinavian countries as
Okay.
well as the countries located next to them. Scandinavian countries would actually be Sweden, Denmark, and Norway.
Okay.
But in the Nordic countries, it goes by, well, we're all up here. So you add in Finland and Iceland.
Right.
So those five countries technically make up the Nordic countries. Sometimes they put Estonia in there as well. And
Okay.
Nordic is similar to, saying like the South. You can change which states you want in there if you really want
Okay.
to.
So more
Because
of a
it's not
region. So it's a regional
the
kind of.
region.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
Scandinavia is the area that is logistically locked. Like only
Okay.
those three countries are Scandinavia, which is why they created the Nordics because Finland and Sweden are pretty much the same country, but
Okay.
Sweden is Scandinavia, Finland is not.
Got you.
And
Got you.
Finland and Sweden, we play each other in every sport as a rivalry every year. Every
Got
year.
you. Got you. Got you. Well, love it, man. So look, let me ask you this. So what is the state of American football over there in Europe, right? So you're watching American football, man. You told me a little bit of how like the clubs work. Or you told us all about how the club model kind of works over there in Europe, right? So you're looking at the state of football. Man, you're seeing a small gap somewhere, and you're like, man, these kids need to go over here to the U.S. Man, we got some boys over here who can get some scholarships, but they need to be seen, right? And we know that the football is not big like that over here. So when you looked at the state of European football, man, you started looking at y'all's program, why you guys started, the purpose behind it. What gap did you see, and what made you go, you know what, man, we need to get out to the U.S. and we need to go play some American teams, man, and we need to put our guys, are we going to need to get them notice and the exposure? What was that thing that you saw?
High school football.
Okay.
Um, that's the biggest difference to me is that in Europe we have they protect the kids more. Let's just be honest. Football is a
Okay.
kind of dangerous sport, and
Mm-hmm.
in Europe you have U15, then you
Okay.
have U17, then U19.
Okay.
So you rarely will see a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old
Playing
on the
together.
same field,
Interesting.
unless
Okay.
unless unless a player in certain regions and areas, if they don't have enough players or if a player is extremely talented, yeah, they might get bumped up, but you'll never have that age group really playing against each other. While in the United States, it's common practice. Once you get 10th grade, you're 15, 16, you can go against seniors if you're good enough. A lot of
Right. Right.
depending on where you're from. In some places in the United
Right.
States, I'm thinking just from Texas, a freshman wasn't getting on varsity where I'm from. But
Hey
in
man,
other places,
times have changed, brother. Times have changed.
I've had where I'm from, you can be as good as you want to be. It ain't happening. Like
Yeah.
there's a rite of passage to get on
Right.
varsity where I'm from.
Right.
Like you
Hmm.
have to sit in the Alabama style. You have to sit behind,
Yep.
a couple Heisman winners before you get your shot. But again, that's the difference is that in the States, kids are introduced to that level of competition much
Hmm.
earlier. And
Got you.
in Europe, kids who are 15, 16, a lot of times they just started playing. So it could
Mm,
be dangerous for them to be playing that age group.
got you. So yeah, so y'all
So
don't have those real youth levels at over there in Europe.
you don't see a lot of like
Okay.
from
Got
the
you.
ages 10 to 13 kids playing American football. It's almost non-existent in most countries.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the biggest gap is that without that youth competition,
Hmm.
these kids they're 19, 20, and they still can't compete with Americans who are 16, 17 sometimes when
Wow.
it comes to trying to get into the States or into a college.
Right.
Um, if you look at the most successful European players to go into like colleges, most of them attended some type of high school in the States because they
Interesting.
were able to
Yeah.
learn from high school coaches who coached
Right.
high school players.
High
In
school player.
Europe, a lot of your coaches that are coaching that same age group in Europe, they don't necessarily have the knowledge of how to coach high school players. They only
Yeah.
know how to win the leagues they're in. And there's
Mm,
no knock to them, but a lot of coaches they're learning from NFL and college schemes. That's what they're getting their information from, or from
right.
personnel. But they're
Right.
not learning from high school coaches. They're not
Got you.
learning how to teach young boys how to play
And
football. They're learning.
the grassroots level and all that. Yeah, man. So you notice the gap there, right? For those 14, 15s, all that type age group. That's man, that's interesting, man. And that's kind of that's really impressive, man. The more and more that I'm learning about it and what you guys are doing out there, I'm like, man, I'm rocking with that. I like how y'all are implementing that. How are
You just
people
let me know when you want to come out here, man. We'll get
Hey
down.
man, hey man, we gotta get some things rolling because I'm first of all, I would love to come out there. I never been to Europe. You know what I mean? That's one thing. But then I think that would be dope for the kids, man. The more and more
Honestly,
and the reason
honestly
oh
I'm
go
about to
ahead.
shoot my shot right now, man. Next summer, we're going to be having a couple of camps. Let's make something happen. Get you
Hey
out
man,
here.
we might have to do that, man, because I think it would be cool too, man, as far as if we talk the game perspective, to be able to get the kids to go out and see something outside of the US too. Like, man, this game is global now. You know what I mean? And I love how you guys are starting up something big out there, man. You got the train rolling, man. That's impressive, man. And I want to say congrats to you for what you're doing. I know that ain't easy, man. I know it's not easy. I know it's a pain in the butt, all that. But man, what is the purpose? So I know, man. So let's look at it from the parent perspective. All right. So my parents are coming in. Oh man, we got the Nordic Lions. Okay, man. They're coming from Europe. They're coming from Finland. If you were to tell my parents, and let's say you're talking to them, and you go, what is the purpose of y'all coming out here? Why are y'all? Why did you hit up Coach Pugh? Why did you say you wanted to play us? Why are you bringing your kids out here to us, man? What would you tell those parents?
Opportunity.
Okay.
Um, we're creating an opportunity for these kids that otherwise they wouldn't have. A lot, like I said earlier, a lot of these kids they're not being recruited, and not for any fault of their own, but coaches aren't coming out to Finland and Sweden to recruit kids when they have all these kids right where you're at in Dallas
Yeah.
or in Texas area. Like
Yep.
that doesn't make sense, and the kids know that.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're creating an environment where kids who might not be seen can be seen. We
Yeah.
bring them to the States. We try to contact coaches and teams, get them a look, whether they end up with a scholarship or not. They'll get a taste of what it's like. Last year, our kids went on a recruiting visit at one of the
Yep.
schools out there in Seattle. They
Yep.
loved it. They worked out with a couple of trainers from a couple college programs. It was awesome. They got to see some college campuses, and
Yep.
that was something really unique for them. And that's what we're really trying to give them as an opportunity. Obviously, on the field, they got to see what the competition level was like. And again, we're excited about playing against you guys as well.
Yep.
That's something that they also can't get anywhere else. We
You're
can't
right.
simulate the speed of American players,
That's
11
beautiful,
of
man.
them on the field at the same time. So what we're trying to give these kids is opportunity, as much opportunity as possible.
That's beautiful, man. And one of the things, Like I said before, man, I do a deal, the Coach's Corner podcast, where I interview a lot of the college guys. I know you've seen some of it, man. And that's one of the things that they say all the time is we're looking for guys, man, that go against college competition. You know what I mean? Now with the transfer portal, the way things are changing, man. The thing that I tell the parents all the time, and it's interesting, my guy at Colorado, he says it all the time. He goes, your high school coach is not capable of maximizing your exposure. You know what I mean? He goes, what we do now, the way that we go about our recruiting business, if you're not in this upper echelon level, if you're not better than this transfer, we ain't wasting our time. And man, what you're doing, man, bridging the gap over there on the European side, man, bringing the kids over, letting them see it, letting them get the exposure that they need, man. Because there's guys that can play. At my school, we got a tight end out of, oh man, I want to say he's out of Norway. Can't pronounce his last name to save my life. Big tight end, man. Maybe Norway, maybe Germany, something.
Are you talking about the kid like Theo from Sweden that's at A&M, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sweden. There you go. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, man. And he's one of those kids that A&M found, man. So, man, what you're doing is good, is big, and I think a lot of people need to be put on notice about how you're helping these kids. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But man, with the last question being this, man, what is your ultimate goal with this, man? With the program, what you're doing out there in Europe? How are you trying to build up football, man? How are you trying to bridge the gap for these kids, man? What is that end game for you?
Oh man, I guess. I mean, in game that's tough because we're gonna keep this thing rocking.
Yeah, man, you in it right now. Yep.
Again, I'm gonna lean in on opportunities again and say we want to maximize opportunities. If anything, we want to create even more opportunities. Like I said, we want you to come on over down here and help some of the kids out, develop some of these players. We want to create a pipeline between the U.S. and Europe. We want to keep the flow of information going. We want to make this a bigger thing. Maybe instead of us just going over there, you guys can come over here. Maybe we take 2 teams. Maybe we have a tournament. Maybe we set up an intercontinental. Who knows?
Love it.
I don't have an in game, but there's a lot of different variations that I think that we're working towards, and we're hoping to continue going forward and giving opportunities. Just to throw this out there as well, the opportunities are reciprocal.
Yep.
There are college opportunities for American high school kids in Europe. There are universities out here that will take exchange students, and there's things outside of American football that they could be doing, but there are actual colleges out here who play American football, especially like in the UK, a little bit more than anywhere else. But Sweden has an actual football school, have 2 different university schools. Denmark has a couple of university schools, and those schools are also interested in these types of situations where maybe a team from the USA comes down and plays against them. Maybe a player wants to take a year abroad, and instead of him just going to a normal school, he can go to one of the sports schools here in Europe, and he can still play football during his year abroad in high school. Like that's something that we're working towards, and that's something that we see as being possible in the future.
Man, I love it. I love it, man. Well, look, man, I appreciate your time, man. This is something that would be good, man. Give some insight to our parents about there is football in other countries. Really, let me say it like this. There is football outside of Texas because you know how we are in Texas.
I do want to preface that I will be the only chocolate chip on the team, most likely.
Man, why do you have to do
a vanilla ice cream? I don't want y'all to be surprised.
Hey, man, it's all good. Hey,
and I just don't want you to be surprised that I'm going to stand out. You're going to remember who I am. Yeah, oh, that's the guy. Yeah, I'm the only guy.
Hey, you know what? I do have to say this before we get out, man. You want to know one of the questions I got?
What?
They said, so are we playing like real Vikings? I said, well, I said, that's a great question to ask, and I'm glad that you reminded me of that, man.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got? What's your response to that?
To be accurate, yes and no.
Okay.
The kids of Danish descent are from actual Vikings.
From the Viking lineage and all that? Okay.
Actual Viking lineage. The Swedish kids, depending on their lineage, they might have Viking descent, and most of the Finnish kids aren't actually Vikings. Man. But doesn't mean they don't play like them.
Hey, man, it's all good, man. It's all good. Well, look, man, that's another episode here at the Coach's Corner, man. We got Perfect Pervis with us, man, with the Nordic Lions, man. I'm loving it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, man. I hope you guys have a safe trip when that time comes. You guys come out here, you enjoy it. We have good contest, and then we live it up from there. And but most importantly, man, we make a connection moving forward. Where we can really grow the game on both sides, man. I really, really, really like everything that you're doing, man. Now that I got to know more what you're doing to grow it, you deserve your flowers, dog. And I know it's a thankless job, man, doing this, but you're doing your thing. All right, man. So you heard it from us. All right. Well, look, that's another episode of Coach's Corner, man. We'll see y'all next time.